Do you feel like that there's a lot of chaos and noise in the world right now? Well, you really want to watch this podcast because I believe it's going to help reduce the noise and maybe restore your hope that there are good things happening in this community today, right in your backyard. So stay tuned. All right, I've got Micah here with us today. This is the October edition of the Lost and Foundry Show. Cutting it close because this is going out on October 31st. But if you're watching this in November, then still the October edition of the Lost and Foundry Show. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff today. I want to start off the podcast by doing a bit of a praise report for the Foundry. And let's talk about numbers. I'm a numbers guy. I think if you care about something, you keep the numbers.
Absolutely, you do. You keep score.
You keep score, right. And my Falcons football team, I try not to keep score with that even though I care about it.
Fair enough.
But, okay, so here's some of the great things that have been happening around the Foundry. This year, to date, 2023 to date, and we're not over yet, we've provided 59,000 nights of shelter so far this year, 178,000 meals so far this year. That's a lot of
That's
food.
a lot of food.
And with the food prices increasing, we really feel that number.
That's a lot of food.
We've had, for you volunteers out there, I want to shout out you, we've had 4,669 volunteer hours so far this year. And we really feel the impact of that. When volunteers are here doing stuff, it's so life-giving around here. 8,000 hours of counseling, of participants in counseling, getting one-on-one counseling. That's a huge impact too, and we're really proud of that number. But this is the one number I want us to focus on right now, and we've had 88 people graduate from our program this year, 88. And to put that into perspective, that is 16 more than we had this time last year. So we're doing a great job. If I had to say so myself, program people are doing an excellent job. And I know Brandon really cares about the quality of our programs, and he's a bit of a general when it comes to driving this thing and driving it home. And obviously the leadership is doing a lot, but there are a lot of employees who have been consistently stepping up and showing out and making things happen. So if you know an employee at the Foundry, I think you should text them today and tell them how good of a job they're doing and that you see the value of the work and what they're doing. And speaking of that, we kind of hinted at it early in the show of seeing the value of the work that's happening here at the Foundry. I'm curious to see what you would say. You know, you've been involved with ministry for a long time, and there's always been a certain amount of doom and gloom for the world, right? Sure. That hasn't changed, but it does seem like with the nature of social media and news stations figuring out what will bring viewers back, and it seems like the amount of doom and gloom keeps ramping up year on year. And sometimes when things come close to home like COVID did, like obviously that can ramp it up. But during your years of ministry, what would you say you do mentally to help yourself stay on mission? You know, when it can, sometimes you can, even if it's taking a step back, that can be a big negative in your ministry.
So all right, let's take it for the last month, right? What's been happening in Israel, even more recently, what's been happening in Maine. I think, Hunter, what happens is if you get wrapped into those kinds of things, and we all do, it's our world, it's our life, especially if we have anybody in those connections, we get this feeling of hopelessness, right? We know that God is in control. We trust, our faith is in action there. But man, it's just like, what else could happen, right? And it's just this, and the same thing happens in organizations and ministries as well. And when all of the things around us start happening, we begin to get this, if we're not careful, not purposeful, we get this feeling of we're just kind of about to go off the tracks. And so about 10 or 12 years ago was probably the first time I heard this phrase, mission drift. And it was this idea of over a period of time, unless we're purposeful and intentional about maintaining our course, we will unintentionally drift, right, from the core mission of what we've been called to do. And so we are very alert at the Foundry about mission drift. I think a second part of that is know your calling, right? Over the last 4 years here at the Foundry, we've kind of been in a reduction mode in one sense, where we've said there's some things that we're going to stop doing that we've been doing that are good things that need to be done. However, it allows us to be laser focused on what our calling is. And that calling is to restore hope and rebuild the lives of the addict, right? And so we've just been super focused, almost hyper focused, in saying, let's make sure that we stay the course because we know our call. I think the third part of that for me would be this: focus on your culture, right? Know who you are as an organization, as a ministry, as an individual. There are certain things that I'm just not going to pursue in life because I know I have a family culture, right? I'm not going to go out and try to pursue a different career path. That I'm going to stay in what I know. And at the Foundry, and I think as individuals, even in businesses, knowing your culture and focusing on your culture, I think is what really helps the noise around us become softer. Because you turn the volume up on things that you know who you are, you know where you're going, you know what it's going to take to get there. And for us here at the Foundry, it's helping men and women put the pieces of their life back together. And so we just focus in on that and saying, yes, the world is going to get crazier, probably according to God's word. It's going to get even crazier than it already is. But we're going to stay focused on what we know is our deliverables, our deliverables to the people that we serve.
Yeah, and the phraseology of saying that noise in the world doesn't mean these aren't important issues that deserve our time and attention.
For sure.
But I think it can sometimes prevent good from being great in what we can do in our lives because we're so distracted.
That's right. So some of the things that we've stopped doing over the last couple of years were not bad things. They were good things. But we kind of discovered that there are other people doing good things as well. So let's let them do those things, and let's focus in on doing great things. And it's the whole adage of good to great, right? They're not bad things. Just like the events in our world aren't necessarily. I can't say that they're not bad things because most of them are traumatic in that sense. But knowing what can I do to make the biggest difference in my lane, I guess is one way to look at it.
Yeah. I would say the other thing that I would like us to discuss is when I become debilitated by fear, where I can't do anything because I feel like the world is falling apart. Sometimes my best course of action is to find something I can do something about.
Yeah.
Right. And so my challenge to you, and I would like us to discuss it, is how could someone look at what's happening here at the Foundry and say, this is a worthy cause. Let me do something about this when I'm out of control and all these other things.
Yeah. So statistically, Hunter, 3 out of every 4 Americans has a direct connection to somebody struggling and battling addiction, some form or fashion. And so it doesn't fall far from most of us. We know. So I think what we can do is figure out, all right, what are the things in my life, my skills, my abilities, my passions, my desires, the things that drive me to be a better person, and how can I use those things for someone else's benefit, not just my benefit? What's the old saying? It's more of a blessing to give than it is to receive. Yeah. I say that's I believe that's a passage of scripture even. So, but the whole idea is how can I take who I am, invest in someone else's life, and the Foundry creates those opportunities every single day. I get asked all the time, what's the greatest need at the Foundry? And people typically, when they're asking that question, do you need us to come paint something? Do you need us to come fix something? Do you need us to come build something? And I repeatedly say, no. Your presence is more powerful than your performance. And what I mean by that is you being present in the life of someone who is trying to figure it out. I'll give you a great example. An individual that's in our recovery program is a mother, has multiple children under the age of 10, right? 4, in fact. And her entire time as a mother has been revolving around her addiction. And so she's trying to figure out what parenting is going to look like free from that addiction. Well, we're kind of helping her with the addiction side. And so what we're looking for are ladies who are godly mothers that will come in and just spend some time letting their experiences almost rub off, right, on the lady that's in our recovery program right now. And that's why I say your presence is more powerful than your performance. I don't need you to come do anything. I just need you to be here. And so I think when we look at that from a life perspective, we can have more influence and impact, especially here at the Foundry, than we probably even give ourselves credit for.
Yeah. And what Micah is saying, here's the actionable of that. You go to foundryministries.com/serve, and there are volunteer opportunities right there to get here and get through the door. And most of them are easy and about getting you there with the participants. And, it's twofold. I'll let you in on a secret, and that's we know that when you get here and you speak to these participants, that you will become just so excited about the potential for life for them, and that they come from a place where a substance was controlling their life. That's why it's a substance abuse disorder. It's a controlling device. And when that is removed from their life and now they have control of their life again, man, the amount, it's hard to put into words how beautiful the process is. And we know that when you see that process firsthand, that you'll just want to come here every day, all day, just to pour life into these participants, these mothers and these fathers. So go to foundryministries.com/serve. There are opportunities like writing a letter of encouragement, which is a good way to get your foot in the door. But I think you should be here, and we have speaker opportunities where while they're eating lunch, you just talk about your story, right? Or you're just there to encourage them, or maybe you're there to teach them a new skill. There's Bible studies you can teach. There's we have different classes for like anger management that you could help and lead that. And then there's mentorship. If you're a man right now and you have the capacity to be a mentor, I think you should be here mentoring these men. There's 80 men on property here in Bessemer, another 80 men up at the farm, and they need godly men in their life to show an example of what it means to be a consistent husband, to be a father, why it matters to keep a steady job and be a provider for your family. So, and when you give right and you make a difference, sometimes it's almost like a barrier that keeps the negativity in your mind away.
For sure. Well, it's the same thing with having a spirit of gratitude or thankfulness, right? I heard a guy this weekend just reminded me, the very first thought that I should have every morning it should be one of thankfulness. It's not always that way for me, but I have to remind myself to always be grateful and thankful. Why? Because it changes the way I think. My pastor has said this many times. It doesn't have to be every day or all day, but it has to be every day. And so to begin, how I start is how I will finish, determines the capacity for how I'll finish. And so those are kind of the things that I think when you're talking about coming and being a part of what's happening at the Foundry, those things kind of determine and dictate what happens later, I believe. So,
And I think something cool can happen where you don't need to be this perfect person who has their life figured out to be here helping people. In fact, I think part of perfecting your life and getting things figured out is being there for others. It does two things. It helps them, but it helps you back, and it's this life-giving cycle.
So, I've discovered in 51 years, perfect people do not exist.
That's very true.
And we are a collection of imperfect people at the Foundry, trying to help imperfect people find Christ.
Yeah, and oftentimes the participants who are in the program will end up on staff at some capacity at the Foundry at some point in their thing. So, you're talking about people who are coming from imperfect situations, and they're finding God in life and finding themselves, and they end up working here. Many of them end up volunteering here as well. So, don't let what's going on in the world, or maybe even what's going on in your personal life, keep you from being part of this life-giving process. And, if you need some inspiration to get here, we have lots of video testimonies on Instagram, Facebook page, YouTube, where you can kind of see where people come from and where they end up during this process. So talking about, where they come from and where they end up and where our ministry has come from as kind of a multifaceted ministry that was maybe trying to do too much. So now that we've honed in and focused in on addiction recovery and doing that really well, what are kind of the hurdles that we're dealing with as we move forward into 2024?
All right, so I'll talk a little bit, Hunter, just about the hurdles of addiction recovery itself, right?
Yeah.
So I think in recent years, the introduction of fentanyl. You can't turn on the news without seeing a story about something like that. It feels like fentanyl is ravaging people's lives. I've watched over this last year and a half how men and women that come to the Foundry that explain to us that their primary drug of choice is fentanyl. And that just doesn't make sense to someone who's not lived in that world. How you could take your life into your own hands every single time, and the chances, it's like the worst game of roulette, I believe. I've lost several friends this year to fentanyl overdoses, friends that I've known through this ministry, right? And so I think when you talk about challenges and hurdles, the fentanyl world creates a significant one. I also think the mental health situation in our country, and I've been asked this question. I've asked myself this question. I've asked others this question. Are mental health issues on the rise, or are we just much more aware of it? Mm-hmm. And my answer has been, does it even matter, yeah. Right? It's the simple fact of we have issues, mental health issues, with a lot of people in our world that we're trying to make a difference and try to help them. And so I think that's a challenge to recovery, right? There are other co-occurring issues going on that are preventing some people from getting the treatment and the help and the care that they need from the substance abuse side. And I think the third piece is one of the hurdles for recovery is unresolved trauma. We see it every single day. I think childhood trauma is one of the greatest indicators of long-term substance use disorder and substance abuse, and we know that. And so I think some of those hurdles, from an individual's perspective, kind of create some barriers for. And then you look at organizational, right? What are some of the ministry barriers? And there are never enough resources. Right, you've always got to be looking for resources. Just from a monetary perspective, you think we've got a balanced budget at the Foundry and we're cooking right along. Then fuel prices spike, then food costs increase, and all of these things that are outside factors that just make it tougher to serve the same number of people year after year after year.
It's just just following the inflation would require a couple $100,000 of extra fundraising for us just this year.
Absolutely. And then when inflation happens, what happens? People that have been donors, you kind of tighten the belt up a little bit, right?
Have to, yeah.
Yeah, and so never enough resources. Here's the thing. If I had the money, I would hire 5 new counselors tomorrow, right? So that we could give more intensive care to the men and women that we serve. I think we do a great job now. I think our staff and our counselors in particular are gifted. They are highly skilled, trained, do a lot. But what would happen? What would it look like if we had greater resources? We had 2 or 3 additional at each location. So I think those are some hurdles and some barriers as well that we face organizationally.
Yeah, and so I hope you guys hear the call, and the call is that, we're doing great work here, but the opportunity to do even greater work is right there on the table. So any way that you partner with us, whether that's through volunteering or by becoming a monthly contributor at our monthly giving page, engaging with us, every bit of engagement is life on the other side of that engagement.
That's right.
So, and I hope you walk away from this discussion with, in a world full of issues and people's like, here's my problem and here's the problem over here and here's a movie about this problem and lots of things demand your attention. And a lot of that attention is just that attention. There's no solving the problem. Yeah. There's nothing you can do to solve the problem. And I hope that you see that here in your own backyard in the greater Birmingham area up in Coleman, that we have a solution to a problem here and that you can be a part of that solution. So go to foundryministries.com today if you want to be part of that solution. There's lots of ways for did one of the lights just go out?
I believe it did.
Look, the lights are going out here. We need you. I'm just kidding. Speaking of that stuff, one of the cool things we started this year. Oh, it's this light here. I'm going to stand up and fix this light.
You go right ahead.
While I do that, I would love for you to talk about your inspiration for the Memorial Scholarship Fund that you started and how that's turned into kind of a greater fund.
Yeah. So last calendar year, 2022, we had 490 men and women enter one of our recovery programs. About 100 of those men and women did not have the ability to provide their intake fee. So at the Foundry, $695 one-time fee is all it takes for the 9-month recovery efforts that we provide for an individual. By no means does that cover the cost. That's the only out-of-pocket cost, however, to a program participant. So we had about 100 individuals that just didn't have it, so we scholarshiped them. Out of that 100 scholarships, we had funding attached to about a third of those scholarships, which meant that there was a $695 out there that would cover that. The rest of them, we just kind of took it upon ourselves, and I guess one way to say it is we ate that cost. Mm-hmm. So out of that came this idea, and I thought, what can we do that creates honor for someone that would support that effort of providing a scholarship, and something that would create dignity for someone receiving a scholarship? So we created the Memorial Scholarship Fund. And what that looks like, we started it with my family. It's now greatly expanded since then. But what happens is, for $695, a family can bring honor and memory to a family member, a loved one. For ours, it was my grandfather, an amazing guy. Roy McSwain passed away almost 11 years ago. And so we created a scholarship fund in his memory for $695, renewable annually, right? And so what now happens is when someone comes to the Foundry and just doesn't have the ability to provide that intake fee, we pair them, we vet them. There's a process that we walk through, and we connect them with that funding for that $695, which allows them to come into the program. That individual in turn writes a letter back to the donor family that explains to them, first of all, how thankful they are for the opportunity, but kind of gives a little bit of their story and their background. So the family not only honors someone that they love, but they also have a connection. And it's a small connection, but a connection nonetheless.
And it's anonymous.
And it is. And so for confidentiality matters, right? We want to keep it private. But it lets that family know, hey, we're making a difference in somebody's life. We may never see them at all. May never have a chance to know their full name or get to meet them, but we've made a difference in somebody's life for $695. And so that is our Memorial Scholarship Fund that we have initiated here at the Foundry.
Yeah, and I think the idea is that there are people in your life that were either leaders or they were hugely inspirational for the way you live your life today, or maybe they're patriarchs or matriarchs of the family today. And you can take a little bit of the inspiration of that person and maybe give that to someone else. And for you, it was your grandfather and, him serving in World War II and kind of the man he was and how that inspired the man you are today. And you would love to take just a little bit of that inspiration and give it to someone else.
That's right.
But also to honor that person. And so we're talking about $695. And so this is a great way for you to start your own personal fundraiser as well, to say, I'm going to raise an intake fee every year and do it in honor of this person in my life. So if you're interested in that, there's a link in the description. I think it's at foundryministries.com/memorial where you can start that process today. And I think it's a really cool program. I think that sometimes we can just have these like arbitrary numbers, but to say I'm going to cover an intake fee is a really good goal to try to hit.
Absolutely.
especially because it's the only out-of-pocket fee for participants. And many of them are already getting scholarships from other sources coming into the program, or they have a church or something like that that will help sponsor them.
Or a family member that's already paying for it and providing for it.
So I want to end by doing a bit of a recap. About a year ago today, we started our Give and Grow Weeks.
Yeah.
And we constantly talk about how good it's been. I want to get a little bit into the details of what we've learned over a year, what changes we might try to implement moving forward. But to give a quick recap, about 4 years ago, we had the idea that Brandon really had the idea that he wanted to switch the way our programs worked up pretty dramatically. And then when COVID hit and things kind of shut down, you had the leadership to say, well, we have a moment to reimagine before people come back. Let's start reimagining. Well, it ended up being a big project. We couldn't get it.
It took 18 months to kind of figure it out.
So, and that was a year ago that we hit the end of that 18 months and we got it done. So Give and Grow Weeks are a really good model, much improved over our last model, where before people had their daily activity that they did, whether that's being up front or being at the thrift stores. And then in the afternoons when they got back is when counseling and education, spiritual awakening, anything like that was happening kind of in the afternoon. And anybody that knows anything about working, usually your most productive time is between 9 and 12 p.m. So they're out doing things that might not be productive for their spiritual journey or their recovery journey. So we said, well, how do we change up the model so that people are spending more time learning and developing? And so Give and Grow Weeks is what came out of that. We went to Texas and learned new models for how to run thrift stores, and we talked to other organizations. And so what we do now is it's like a college campus. 1 week you're going to be at your serve location giving back what you've learned, right? And that's answering phone calls at the front desk, helping with intake. Maybe you're at a thrift store helping sort clothes out in the back or putting the clothes on the racks at the thrift store. Maybe you're helping the maintenance guys change out batteries and fire alarms. But that's what you do 1 week. And then the next week, it's like you're in class all week. Part of that is us partnering with Hope Inspired Ministry to help with their incredible work development program. But it's also being in, we have a class right now happening right over here. One of our volunteers leads an incredible group counseling, learning, education class. They're doing it right now right here. And I share a wall with it, so I get to hear lots of good information too. It's a good class for me too. So they spend a week doing that. So now it's been a year. It's implemented everywhere. We've got it up at the farm, and we've been doing it here in Bessemer for a year. It's been good. What have we learned during the process?
Yeah. Well, we learned that anytime you change directions or refine directions, you're going to experience growing pains, right? And so already we have seen some things that we implemented early, that we abandoned. We implemented some things early that we said, all right, the intent and the motive is good, but the methodology needs to be adjusted.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we saw a lot larger number of things. We said, this is working even better than we imagined it would have. And so I have said this multiple times in the last year, is I believe that what we offer to the participant is the healthiest it's ever been in the history of the Foundry. And that's not to negate all of the great things that have happened in the past, but as you learn more and as you evolve as a ministry, you can get better if you, as we say at the Foundry, are dedicated to continuously improving.
Yeah, we stand on the shoulder of giants.
We do. And so one of our key core values is we are continuously improving. I drive people crazy around here because I'm always trying to tweak what we do just to make it better. And the reason is because I believe the Lord deserves our best, but I also believe the men and women that we serve deserve our best. And so we have noticed some things that have been very beneficial, and we're saying, all right, how do we multiply those things? If it didn't work like we wanted it to or like we thought it should, then we've stopped and we've changed gears even within this first 12 months. But really locking in on the things that are working great. And I'll give you a great example. We believe it's important for men and women that come to the Foundry that at some point in that cycle, we get them connected to a local church, right? And part of the philosophy there is when you leave, you're going to play like you practiced.
Right.
Right? So we want you to feel comfortable walking into a church on a Sunday morning that is outside of the Foundry. We started that right out of the gate. It kind of started to wane a little bit. We had some transportation issues, couldn't get people to churches on Sunday mornings. It's a certain number of people. You've got to get to a certain point before you're actually eligible to do that. But we saw that kind of start slipping. And so what did we do? We came back and said, all right, we're going to keep improving this. So we figured out other ways to make that connection. Because again, my desire for every participant at the Foundry is the first Sunday after you leave the Foundry, you're in a church somewhere. Because and you're probably not going to be at the church that you've been attending while you've been here, because so many people don't live in this community. They live across the state, across the country. But I want you to get into that routine, into that habit of saying, this is important to me, because we know that we ultimately will play how we've practiced. Yeah. And so that's one of the things that we said, this brings value, let's increase this. And so many more examples, Hunter, the classroom, the content that we are providing. We just wanted to bring a greater balance to what I would consider to be therapeutic weeks, the therapeutic hours, which are the grow hours. And so we're trying to I describe it like this to the participants constantly. I'm trying to help you pack the bag so that when you get to the destination, you've got absolutely everything in that bag, in that suitcase that you need to sustain and enjoy that trip, right? Because we've all ended up at places on vacation and we forgot something, right? And we had to go out and buy it. And that's what we're trying to prevent. We're trying to give them everything they need in their tool bag or their suitcase, that when they get to where they're going, they've got everything they need.
Yeah, and the new model gives us the breathing room to allow us to tweak things and figure it out, where before it felt like
we were on a constant treadmill.
Right. Yeah. Even work, like a treadmill going faster than what we could run. Right. So we kept falling off.
Yeah, you get the image of it, man. You run so fast, you're going to fall down, you got to jump right back up.
Yeah. I feel like we're innovators. Like, we're Apple, and I feel like everybody's going to be doing this. It's so good at some point, and that we're going to be selling books, and Brandon's going to be, he's going to have a very philosopher beard face on the front of the book in black and white. It's the Foundry process. So maybe, and you guys are hearing about it first, the Foundry process, the Foundry way. We have the Foundry way, but
that's it.
So, hey, thanks for joining us. If you got something out of this podcast, I would love for you to leave a like, leave a comment, tell us what you learned today. Tell us how you would like to get involved if we don't have that opportunity. Before I end, I would hate to end it during giving season and not mention there's tons of ways for you to be involved, not just as a volunteer, but as a financial partner in all of the life change that's happening here. There's a bunch of different ways you can give. I'm going to highlight 3 of them quick. The Memorial Scholarship. This is the perfect time to start your Memorial Scholarship. As the holidays are coming in and you're about to have your Thanksgiving dinner or your Christmas Day celebration, I think it's a great time to mention to your family, hey, I want to start a scholarship in honor of this loved one who's not here with us this year. And I think we should all chip in together right now to start the scholarship. Now is a great time to do that. I think Thanksgiving, when you're talking about gratitude and that kind of stuff, and you're all, obviously, there's that gaping hole of a person who used to be there at that function. It's a great way to honor that person, but also to give dignity to someone in the program during a time when they may be missing that dignity because they're coming here at the Foundry and they're having a life-altering experience, right? So 2 other ways. You can give a one-time donation, your year-end, your giving donation by going to foundryministries.com/donate. But also don't forget, you can join the change today. We've been talking about our life change programs a lot today. And the change is a way to directly support those life change programs by being a monthly contributor. We've talked about 59,000 nights of shelter, 178,000 meals, over 8,000 hours of counseling. Those things happen because of people who have joined the change, who contribute on a monthly basis. And we know that we can pay our counselor today because our monthly givers came in and gave this month. So join the change at foundryministries.com/thechange and support our life change programs. Hey, we appreciate you. Most of you are incredible champions of this program, and we couldn't do it without you. So we appreciate you. We look forward to seeing you next month at the Lawson Foundry Show.